Sometimes, in order to feel the devastation of parents that have lost a child to violent crime, we have to put ourselves into their hearts and minds. What if you had an 8-year-old daughter, and on a warm summer's evening you allowed her to go off and play with the rest of the children? The sun descends into twilight, and all the children return safely home. All the children but yours. Your 8-year-old didn't make it home because some wicked soul has seen fit to take her life. What if your search for justice remained just out of reach? Tell me, how would you feel? This is Renee Freer's story and the answer to why her killer will remain free. Eight-year-old Renee Freer lived here in Monroe, Connecticut. This small New England community seemed the perfect place for the newly divorced Felicia Wasik Freer to bring her children in 1975, a place to reflect and start over. The modest home at 33 Williams Road was rented by Felicia's parents, who were there to support the recent changes in her life. Renee and her 4-year-old brother Nathaniel quickly settled in, and over the next 2 years had made many friends. Many of the neighborhood children played in the woods abutting the homes on Williams. It was a magical place for adventures and creating childhood memories. It even had a path that led to a neighboring horse barn. Renee dreamed of becoming a veterinarian, so you can imagine how the wildlife of the woods and the horses just off the path would have captivated the 8-year-old. But Renee would never go into the woods alone. So when her bludgeoned body was found there, the question then became, who led Renee to her death on June 22, 1977? The day started out filled with excitement. June 23rd would mark the last day of school. Everyone was looking forward to the summer break. Even Felicia got into the festive mood by offering to bake cookies for Renee to take to school to share with her classmates. What should have been a time to celebrate became a time of shock and horror, a moment in time that would change everyone and everything on Williams Road. Gone were the days of feeling safe. Children became fiercely protected, and parents looked at their neighbors suspiciously. No one could comprehend who could have committed such a brutal murder. Why would someone kill a child? Why would someone kill Renee? She was kind, sweet, funny, and generous. So what about a child with the nickname Giggles would trigger such rage in someone that they would feel compelled to take her life? Let's begin with Renee's timeline from 6 p.m. until 10:15 p.m. when her body was discovered. Between 6 and 6:30 p.m., Renee delivers strawberries to an elderly neighbor and then heads back home for dinner. At 6:30 p.m., Renee and her 4-year-old brother leave their home to go play with friends. Somewhere within the time frame of 6:30 and 7 p.m., there were reports that one neighbor thought they remembered seeing Renee at the foot of the road with some other children. Another neighbor claimed to have seen her with a boy. There was another report that Renee's brother Nathaniel stopped to play 3 doors down from their home and last saw his sister heading back towards the woods alone. There were no specific times for these reports. There was confirmation that Renee stopped at number 39 looking for her friend Bonnie shortly after 6:30 p.m. Bonnie's mother said that Renee knocked on the back door and asked to see her daughter. She told her that Bonnie had already left to go play with the other children. This was the last time that Renee was seen alive. Sometime after 6:30 p.m., Renee enters the woods with someone she is familiar with and is killed before 7 p.m. At 7 p.m., Renee's mother, Felicia, needs to make a quick run to the store for a few ingredients for the cookies that she's making. Felicia calls out to Renee to see if she wants to come along but gets no response, so she decides to go on without her. At 8 p.m., Felicia returns home and immediately notices that Renee has not come in from playing. She walks through the neighborhood on Williams Road, calling for her daughter. Between 8 and 9 p.m., Felicia is now panicking and gathers neighbors together to help her search. At one point, Felicia drives over to the horse barn to see if Renee has gone there and somehow just lost track of time. 9:15 p.m., Felicia now realizes that no one has seen her daughter for over 2 hours and notifies authorities that her daughter is missing. Officers race to the scene and begin a thorough search of the area. 10:15 p.m., Special Policemen Kevin Cahill and Robert Ventrilo find Renee's body in the woods, about 300 yards from her home. Now that Renee had been found, police had the heart-wrenching task of notifying the Freer family of their discovery. It has been reported that after Felicia was given the tragic news, she had to be restrained after trying to run into the woods to be with her daughter. Felicia's anguished cries would never be forgotten by anyone that was present that evening. Once authorities had her under control, Renee's grandfather, Thaddeus Wasik, was taken to officially identify her body. Here is what we know of Renee's cause of death and the details surrounding the crime scene. The 8-year-old was found lying on her back and died from 2 crushing blows to the head. Officials stated that there was no apparent sign of sexual molestation. Over the years, some have wondered why the word apparent had been used to describe if Renee had been violated in any way. Then there were scratches on Renee's neck, and a substance was found under her fingernails, but no further information was given about what that may have been. Her shorts were in place, but her blouse had been pulled up, and the collar was torn. After a thorough search of the woods, it was noted that there were at least 2 different locations where blood was found on the thick coverage of leaves on the ground. A disturbance of the undergrowth suggested that the killer dragged Renee to her final resting place. An 8-pound rock believed to have been the weapon was covered in blood and found near her body. The leaves and other debris prevented police from retrieving any footprints. This was clearly no accident. The intent to take this child's life was evident. Police were now left with the difficult task of figuring out a motive and who would have been capable of committing such a heinous crime. The neighborhood surrounding Williams Road was sparsely populated with single-family homes and wasn't considered to be a high-traffic area. It would be almost impossible for an outsider to suddenly appear and go unnoticed. It was also unlikely that Renee would have followed a stranger into the woods. That left one other possibility: the neighborhood children. Let's take a moment to consider this. What kind of child kills another child? We know from a psychological standpoint that these children have previous aggressive or violent behavior. They usually have no impulse control and lack empathy. In many cases, they can be victims of abuse or neglect in a family filled with dysfunction. Feelings of social isolation can also push an unstable child to commit such acts. We must also consider the many other variables in this murder, such as the weapon used and the transfer of evidence from the victim to the perpetrator. Blunt force trauma to the head from an 8-pound rock would cause a lot of bleeding. There most likely would have been a certain amount of cast off from the blows, leaving traces of Renee's blood on the perpetrator. We then have to question what happened to the bloody clothes the child was wearing. Did he confess to a parent and they helped him cover up his crime? When police were interviewing everyone in the neighborhood, did a parent provide an alibi for their child? As unfathomable as this sounds, this scenario cannot be discounted. Police stated that there were laws protecting juveniles, so they were never able to put the case to sleep. Now let's move on to the physical evidence and the autopsy of Renee's body. A pathological autopsy was performed on Renee at St. Vincent's Medical Center in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Typically, a medical examiner trained in forensics would have performed the examination, but 3 other murders in the state that day prevented this. Law enforcement felt that the hospital autopsy impeded their investigation due to the hospital's lack of forensic training. There are major differences between a pathological and forensic autopsy. A pathological autopsy is clinical and focuses mainly on specific organs that is used to determine a cause of death upon the consent of the decedent's next of kin. A forensic autopsy is authorized by a coroner without family consent. The focus of the medical examiner goes beyond cause of death. A murder victim's body is searched for trace evidence. A toxicology screening is performed, and all documentation of injuries or other unusual markings from every part of the victim's body is included in their report. How Renee's autopsy impacted the case is still debated today. Items from the crime scene were sent to the FBI for testing. An attempt to lift fingerprints from the bloody rock failed. The surface was too rough to recover anything usable. At the time, the process of lifting fingerprints from a victim's body was utilized, but it too was new to investigations. Without a clear motive and leads quickly drying up, police turned their attention to 3 prominent experts in their fields. The first was Dr. Henry Lee. He was asked to study the original autopsy 3 months after the murder. He reported that there was a semi-lunar mark under one of Renee's breasts that was similar to a bite mark. Renee's body was exhumed for further examination, but they were unable to definitively say that the mark was from a bite. The next experts to join the investigation were high-profile paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were living in Monroe at the time. Lorraine hoped to connect with Renee's spirit. A detective was asked by the Warrens to sleep in Renee's bedroom and record any activity. The only thing picked up on the recordings was the ticking from Renee's broken clock. Moving forward, police felt that the well-preserved samples of the substance under Renee's fingernails and some hair samples retrieved from her body would one day help lead them to her killer. From June of 1977 to June of 2000, the case stayed active, with the only public update being that Governor John Rowland was now offering a $50,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of Renee's killer. Sadly, even this large amount of money brought no one forward. Then, decades after hoping and praying for a break in the case, there was finally an end in sight. But the news would leave everyone devastated. Here is the explanation of why Renee Freer's killer is going to remain free. On July 11, 2025, police submitted a juvenile arrest warrant to the state's attorney's office, charging a suspect with first-degree manslaughter. 2 months later, on September 18th, prosecutors told police they would not approve the warrant due to the statute of limitations on manslaughter, which was 5 years, and the age of the suspect at the time of the killing. Based on the brutality of the crime, a prosecution of murder was considered, but the law in effect at the time of the crime bars a murder prosecution due to the age of the suspect. At the time of the killing, a juvenile charged with murder could only be transferred to the adult criminal court docket if the suspect was at least 14 years of age when the killing happened. Police Chief Keith White released a statement on October 16, 2025, saying that given the current status of the investigation and the conclusive opinion of the state's attorney, Renee Freer's case has been regretfully marked closed. Renee's family said in a statement, "The pain of knowing that the person responsible for brutally taking an innocent 8-year-old's life has been identified, yet will face no consequences, is unbearable." Here is more of what they had to say.
I remember everything from that night. the call when she went missing and the call when she was found. We are not giving up. Until we're dead, we're not giving up. She was 8 years old. She didn't get to live a life. She didn't get to grow up, be an adult, get married. And if this is what I could do to get it solved, this is what I'll do.
You can't put words to it because you can't think that it was going to be a murder. You know, not of an 8-year-old girl. So far, they've lived their whole life. You know, maybe had a family of their own, but Renee never got that chance. You know, everything was taken from her family.
Under the Freedom of Information Act, Renee's case files, though likely heavily redacted, will now be open to the public upon request. The crime scene photos will remain sealed. Renee's cousin John Wasik had this to say: "I don't like the idea of the files being open. One thing I wouldn't mind released is the photo and description of what was done to her. She had no face left." The outrage felt by Renee Freer's family is joined by so many others who believe that they have been abandoned by the justice system. Anyone whose life has been touched by juvenile violence oftentimes feel as if they have been denied closure and fear that there are no safeguards to protect society against a lack of accountability. Currently, steps have begun to pass a proposal called Renee's Law in Connecticut. As it stands now, juveniles under 14 who are suspected of committing a serious crime are thought to lack the maturity to form criminal intent. This argument is called the infancy defense. Supporters of the proposed Renee's Law argue that individual cases should be presented to the courts to make that determination. Renee's Law would seek the following: stop the statute of limitations clock when the offender is a juvenile, remove time limits for crimes that take a child's life, allow courts to recognize accountability even when the offender was under the age of 14 at the time of the crime. We will put a link in our description box if you would like to learn more about the proposed Renee's Law. Thank you for joining us today. Until we see you again with another cold case, please stay well and be safe. Are you obsessed with true crime content? Subscribe now and join our growing community as we analyze and discuss the details of some truly baffling cold cases. Browse our growing library of cold case investigations and immerse yourself in the mysteries that keep us up at night. Subscribe and join the EOJ community today. All it takes is a click.